right, and welcome back. In this episode, this is going to be part 2 of a multi-part series on developing an MDG, model-driven generation technology, for our shop or our business. So what I want to do is prepare us for developing an MDG. For example, in the last episode, we talked about what an MDG is, but in this episode, we're going to talk about why an MDG and when to develop an MDG. So let's get started. So when do you start an MDG development effort? Number one, it's you already have practices and processes in place for delivering your architecture, your projects, from solution architecture all the way down through design and implementation, of course, starting with requirements. So you already understand what's necessary for your MDGs. And if we look in a particular project, we have building blocks that we use, and we may use tagged values for extending those building blocks. We may use stereotypes in defining our architecture that derive shape scripts and other things, other outcomes that we want to achieve in delivering. And this can be tedious because you're starting with a simple class element, and then you're coming in and adding a bunch of properties and things that are necessary to drive it, all the way down to tag values, and you're getting into generalization and other aspects of object-oriented design. What we want to do is we want to make this as productive as possible, as effective as possible, in order to have the fastest delivery. So with an understanding of the architecture and what you want to create around a repeatable and defined architecture tooling for delivering whatever you're delivering, whether it's class elements as building blocks, class elements as code elements, use cases, state machine diagrams, activity diagrams, and so on, you have to understand the requirements necessary for achieving that. So the very first thing you're going to do is start developing your requirements. And your requirements are what's going to drive your MDG development. Now, this is coming in with a basic understanding of the MDG structure, package structure, from profile all the way down to toolbox and diagrams. And the requirements, the things that you must have in order to accomplish your objectives. So starting with requirements is mission critical, no matter what level. As you're working through your MDG, you're going to get more defined in what you need to create. You might be down into profile stereotypes, and you might come up with some requirements on what you want to do within particular elements or diagrams within your outcome. I should have said your desired outcome. This is a very simple start to an MDG. And in the next episode, we're actually going to step through how to get started. But before you get started, you need to have the necessary tools in place. So in this particular workspace, I have toolbox on the left, very critical. I like browser in the upper right, and I like notes in the lower right. But there's a lot more to your work area and your workspace than just these simple starting windows. Now, these are the typical windows that I like to have open and configured in my custom workspace. So toolbox again is on the left, browser's on the right, and I have notes and properties in the lower right. But there's a lot more that we need to talk about. Number one is I'd like to have discuss and review. As I'm starting ideas, and I did a video on journal, but I have journal, I have discuss, and I have review. I like to actually have that over on the left underneath the toolbox so I can very quickly get to it. I also like to have focus up that allows me to get to things like what was recent, model views I've developed, library items, many libraries, and those things. I like to have those readily available like I have tools. So I might put focus somewhere in the middle so I can very quickly get to discussions. I can get to journal. I can start journalizing the elements from requirements all the way down to any element within our implementation area. On the right side, I like to have, let me move scenarios, which is the last thing I want to talk about. I like to have pan and zoom. And I'm going to drag and drop pan and zoom there. Here's libraries separate from focus libraries. I like to have libraries over in the upper right. I like to have notes, as I stated earlier, in the lower right and the first tab with properties. I like to have features. Let's make this window a little bit wider, a little bit taller. I like to have features in the lower right so I can very, very quickly get to features. We're going to be doing a lot around attributes within our MDG development. I like to have traceability in the lower right. I like to have test cases because we're going to constantly be testing, just like in code development. I like to have that. Timelines, a feature in Sparx 17. I just love this. I put this in the upper right. In fact, I just put it right to the right of browser so that I can very quickly get to it and then get to other things as I need them. Documents. We talked about linked documents. This is valuable just as notes are valuable. I like to have this in the lower right. Now I can drag and drop these out when I'm moving between notes and documents so that I can look at both of them. They are completely separate collections of intelligence. Now I do a lot of scripting and automation, so I keep scripting in the lower right. And then of course my model area where my models exist, they're in the middle, toolbox is over on the left, and now we're starting to see something form here. Now I do a lot of simulations around elements, use cases, activity elements, any elements in here. I might want to do a simulation. I primarily use this when I'm looking at requirements and building scenarios to help understand the steps involved in the tooling. Now, this I may have over on the right of my model space so that I'm able to work between elements, basic paths, and so on. So you've learned how to do scenarios and then auto-generate diagrams as you're working through. So this is a typical workspace. I'm going to line everything in the order that I want. So toolbox, so everything's focused on what I want. And then I can come over to start. I can go to workspaces. I can go to my workspaces, and then I can give it a name. And I'm just going to call this MDG Tech Workspace or Layout. And there we go. Now we have something we can move between other productivity setups. This pretty much has everything that I just talked about. I'm going to go ahead and close scenarios that I talked about, but I want to get to MDG development. I can simply select it, and then it sets everything out the way that I want it. I just need to move scenarios over to the right or over to another monitor. So working in multiple monitors, of course, is the best because all the windows that I just did, we're able to put to the left, to the right, the top to the bottom of the monitor, our primary monitor, as you see here, that we're working on. All right, we're going to wrap up now. I think we're in a good place for the next episode where we're going to get into the Sparx wizards and actually developing our MDG. Make sure you have requirements. I can't overemphasize this. Understand what you're going to be building, and requirements are the what. There's an old saying that says, when process is lost, there's good practice. When good practice is lost, there are rules. When rules are lost, there is ritual, and ritual is the beginning of chaos. So you certainly don't want to have chaos when you're doing this. In building the wizards, we're going to learn how to use Model Builder to build out the package structures that's going to allow us to build out the original profile for our simple class element and one connector. Very simple. That's all we're going to be doing in the next episode. We are going to add a tag value as an enumeration with some values in there to support. And then we're going to build out the toolbox necessary for supporting the diagram that we're going to build as we get into the diagram, utilizing the toolbox that we're going to be building in order to accomplish our objectives. So I really look forward to getting into this exercise with you. This is really fun, but don't get carried away. Keep it simple. Build it out slowly. I'm going to try to explain in detail. That's why I'm going only with a few elements to go slow as I can. But I've been doing this for quite a few years, and hopefully I don't skip over anything that may be important for your development of your own MDG technologies. So until that next episode, happy modeling.